And yep, we have a problem. My daughter is not even 2 and she has almost more shoes than I do. So we need to find a way to store them properly. And I'm sure that Nessie agrees with me. Alright, so for this project I'm going to use some reclaimed wood. It's actually a beam we found with my brother. It was laying on the grass in a field. So first I had to clean it, and for that I used a small hand planer. It works quite well, but it's actually very loud. And then I did a little bit of sanding, and once it was clean, it actually looked really nice. And then it was time to start chopping wood, and for that I use my miter saw, and setting it is actually a pain. I need to build a proper miter station. Then I can slice it in small boards, and this happened. It scared me a little bit, but I was standing on the side of the saw, as I saw on a lot of other makers' video, and it was actually quite powerful because it broke all my drawers. I took a break and had a cup of coffee and then resumed cutting boards. I needed 23 in total, I think. I made a lot of red dust, and it looks a little bit like the surface of Mars.
This is a small project for humankind, but a huge project for little maker.
Are those my first steps in woodworking? It was actually a lot of dust. I might even say it was a bucket full of dust. I then laid out all my boards and made sure I had enough, and it was time to glue them together. I first held them together with two clamps, but I wasn't sure it was really flat, so I used some scrap piece of wood and made it as flat as possible. I only did two gluing at the same time because I hadn't enough place on the table. Once dry, I can remove all the clamps, and then I tried to clean them using a plane. I then realized that I forgot to cut wood for the top and the bottom of my shoe cabinet, so I recut boards and glue them together. And I also tried to clean them with a plane, but I had actually a hard time to do that because, as you can see, my workbench is flexing each time I try to remove wood. It made this task actually quite hard, and I think I need to build a proper workbench very soon. And I used my miter saw again to clean one edge and made it square. And before cutting all the boards to size, I had actually to look back to my notes because I don't have a second chance as I don't have enough of this reclaimed wood. The shoe cabinet is going to be around 92 centimeter high, and the three boards are not the same. The cabinet has to fit in a place that is not square, and the two angles are not the same. So I use this thing to replicate the walls and measure the exact angle on my workbench. And during this process, I was actually wondering how I will hold all the boards together. I was thinking doing some finger joints, but instead I cut some pegs with the same exact angles I got earlier from the walls. And I cleaned all the pegs with this little belt sander, and it took quite some time, but with some music it was fine. And I also cut the angle from the walls on my boards, so it should fit, hopefully. The table saw had left some marks on my boards, so I did a little bit of sanding and sanding and sanding again. I did a lot of sanding in this project. Next, I marked where I would place all my shelf, and the pegs are back. The pegs are back. So I placed them, and then it was time to glue them on the backboard. So I used glue and pin nails, so I was sure it would stay in place. Gluing pegs. Once dry, it was finally time to start assembling the cabinet. So I used glue and again pin nails to be sure that it wouldn't move during the night. And after checking that the angles were right, I let it dry. After a good night of drying, I did the exact same process for the other side. Pew, 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 pew. And while it was drying, I used my bandsaw to cut the top and bottom of the cabinet. And apparently I couldn't find a good way to cut it on the bandsaw, it wouldn't fit. So I took out my Japanese saw, but it just kept breaking and breaking apart. Yeah, I did it! Now that it fits, I can cut it to the rough size. I made a mistake here, and this side is far too long, so I'm going to recut this. It was actually an easy fix. I don't know how I made this mistake, but hey, nobody will know about it, right? There's a power plug just behind the cabinet, so I made a hole so I still could plug stuff in there. And then decided that I wanted to make a front lip for the top of the cabinet, so I can cut it and then glue it in place. I also glued the top of the cabinet at the same time. Apparently I was afraid it would fly away during the night, so I put something heavy on it. Then I marked the dimension for the bottom plate and cut it as close as possible to the right dimension. I think I didn't like the song I was listening to because I had to change it while cutting. And using the bottom piece, I used it to mark all the shelves and I glued it in place. While it was drying, I can cut all the shelves. And to hold the shelves on the front of the cabinet, I'm going to make some lips and make them fit in them, so I had to cut a recess. And I used a flush bit to clean the top of the cabinet. And again, I made a lot of dust. A lot of dust. Alright, so as I said earlier, the front of the shelves will be held by some lips with a recess in it. And I first tried to make this recess using my table saw, but because of the knife, it wouldn't work. So I used my flush router with the smallest bit I had, and it kind of worked actually until the bit broke. Yay! I had to recut the two pieces I did earlier, and this time on the router I used a bigger bit and removed half of one side. So instead of make a groove, I made a recess, as you can see. Once it was done, I can cut all the shelf holder, I can say, instead of lips. I'm not sure lips is the right word. This time I only used glue without nails because I was afraid it would split the shelf holder. I glued all the shelf holder at the same time and I made sure it was square and true every time. Now, because I used nails, I made some ugly holes on the side of my cabinet. So I made a lot of dust again and mixed it with some wood glue. And I used this to fill the holes, and it actually worked quite well. Can you guess what I did just after that? Yeah, sanding again and again, still sanding, slower sanding. I did a lot of sanding in this project. It's finally time for the finish, and I use a mix of linseed oil and beeswax. And I first tried on a scrap piece and it looks amazing. I applied finish everywhere and let it dry a little bit, and then I cleaned it and it looks really good. I'm very happy. Shiny. I put the shelves in, but as you can see some of them wouldn't quite fit, so I got the belt sander out again and sand each one of them to make them fit. And it was finally time to carefully take it away to its final place. And it fits! Woo! And now we can put all the shoes in. I think it looks really nice. I'm very happy because it's my very first piece of furniture I made from the ground up. I hope you like this video. Please share it and subscribe. And see you next time. Bye.